Welcome to the Explainer. Today we are diving into a really intense story from the book of 2 Kings. It's got everything: war, a crazy illusion, and a moral crisis that is, well, it's just horrifying.
All right, so let's jump right in. We're going to unpack the events of 2 Kings chapter 3, specifically verses 21 through 27. And this whole thing really hinges on a story where the line between winning and losing gets, well, it gets really, really blurry. So where does our story kick off? Well, with the entire nation of Moab on high alert. See, they've just gotten word that a massive coalition of kings, we're talking Israel, Judah, and Edom, is on the march, and their goal is to completely crush Moab's rebellion. So yeah, they are getting ready for a huge fight.
And listen, this isn't just your standard army getting called up. No, this is a full-on national mobilization. That phrase, "and upward," it means pretty much every man who could fight, and even the older guys, were called to action. They're not sitting back and waiting to be invaded. They are right there on their border, ready for a showdown.
Okay, so fast forward to the next morning. Something really interesting happens. What started as a divine miracle of water for the invading armies, it's about to become this incredible, almost brilliantly executed deception against Moab. A miracle turns into a mirage.
So how did this illusion even work? Well, you've got the Moabites up on higher ground, looking down. They see these pools of water that weren't there before. But then, as the sun comes up, that early morning red light hits the water just right, and suddenly it looks exactly like a battlefield just drenched in blood.
Now, when the Moabites see this red water, they don't even hesitate. There are no scouts sent out, no second thoughts. They just immediately jump to this disastrously wrong conclusion, totally blinded by what they thought was happening.
They're thinking, this is blood. The kings have turned on each other. And that wasn't a totally crazy idea. There was a lot of bad blood, historically, between Israel and Judah. So thinking the war is already over, they charge down there looking for loot, not a battle. And just like that, their own pride has sprung the perfect trap.
So you can just picture it, right? The Moabites come charging into the camp, all excited, expecting to just grab a bunch of treasure. But instead, they run headfirst into a fully prepared Israelite army, just waiting for them.
And this surprise attack was just absolutely devastating. You have to remember, in ancient warfare, once a side's morale collapsed, the fight was basically over. So this one moment, this one miscalculation, it completely turned the tide of the whole war. And then, the chase was on.
With the Moabite army on the run, the coalition doesn't let up. They launch this absolutely punishing campaign, basically a scorched earth policy. The goal here wasn't just to win, it was to make sure Moab could never, ever resist again.
And when I say total, I mean total. They just systematically dismantled Moab's entire infrastructure. Cities were torn down. Good farmland was ruined with stones. They even stopped up all the wells and cut down the best trees. By the end of it, only one major fortress was left standing, the capital city Kir-Hareseth, and it was completely surrounded. So now you've got the king of Moab, Mesha, trapped in his last stronghold. He knows the battle is lost. It's over. But he sees one last, very slim chance, and he attempts this final, desperate breakout. He takes his 700 best swordsmen and makes a run for it, specifically targeting the Edomite forces. Why them? Well, he probably figured they were the weakest link in the whole coalition. But the attack fails. It just doesn't work. And with his best soldiers beaten back, King Mesha's military defeat is now complete. There's no coming back from this.
So all his military options are gone. His kingdom is in ruins. What happens next is, and I'm not exaggerating, one of the most shocking and genuinely horrifying moments in the entire Bible.
Right there on the city wall, in full view of everyone, of all the attacking armies, King Mesha takes his own son, the heir to the throne, and sacrifices him as a burnt offering. I mean, this is an act of just absolute religious desperation. He's trying to get his god Chemosh to intervene. But it's also a tactic, right? It's psychological warfare designed to completely horrify his enemies.
And this one single act just throws a spotlight on the massive, unbridgeable gap between these two cultures. For Moab, this was it. This was the ultimate appeal to their God in their absolute darkest hour. But for Israel, their law explicitly condemns human sacrifice as an abomination. So for them, this was like staring into a spiritual abyss, a kind of darkness they just could not stomach.
So the text says there was great indignation against Israel. Now, what does that mean? Well, it most likely refers to the overwhelming moral horror that the coalition armies felt. Think about it. They weren't beaten in battle. Not at all. But they were defeated morally.
They were so repulsed by what they saw that they recoiled from it and immediately just abandoned the siege.
So here's the crazy outcome. The coalition won every single battle, but they retreated from the war. They were so disgusted by this act, this spiritually and morally abhorrent thing, that they just couldn't go on. So what's the final score? Moab was militarily destroyed, but politically, their rebellion actually succeeded. Wild, right?
I mean, think about it. The coalition had won, decisively, but the moral price of that victory, having to witness an act of such pure horror, it was just too high. They walked away without claiming their prize, and it leaves us with this really powerful question. What does victory even mean when the cost is that high?